John Adams' Letters from the Front podcast for July 1918. This podcast looks at life in World War I through the letters of John Adams, who was 23 when he joined up in September 1914. He served with the 9th Service Battalion, Royal Irish Fusiliers, and was involved in many significant events on the Western Front, particularly Passchendaele. These are his words, read by his grandchildren and narrated by his great-grandchildren. This is another month where we don't have any of the letters that John wrote. We don't know whether he wrote them or not, but we have the field postcards. That just gives us details of him being alive. But we'll also know, thanks to Nick Metcalf's book Blacker's Boys, that John was involved in an incident at a place called Shoddy Farm. In fact, when John, Roger and myself went out to the Western Front in 2014 and we followed John Adams' letters, that was one of the places we went. And I do remember standing in that field, looking out to where the asylum was, where the Germans were, over to where Shoddy Farm was, where the objective was, and seeing the lay of the land. John Adams was a sergeant of a Lewis gun team. It was quite a significant event for him. It only lasted a few hours, but it is where he got his second military medal, the bar on his medal. If you get a second medal of the same medal, you get a bar across it. If you ever see medals and you see a bar, you know that's because they won 2 of those medals. So in our history section, that is what we will be talking about. My name's Mark Adams, and John Adams was my grandfather.
Stand anywhere on the 440 miles of what was the Western Front, you stand on history. People ate, marched, slept, fought and died on that ground. Some battles lasted months, others hardly made it into the history books. It's thanks to Nick Metcalf's book, Blacker's Boys, that we know of the skirmish that John Adams was involved in July 1918, Shoddy Farm. In 2014, John, Roger and Mark stood in the field that our grandfather stood in. We saw the mud on the ground and also the lay of the land. You can only see so much from a map, but to stand in the field, let us see the slight rises that John Adams, in charge of his Lewis gun team, may have used to shield them from the German machine guns, and the tracks that would have led them to the farm buildings around Shoddy Farm. In July 1918, one of the enemy's strong points near Bayeux on the Ypres front was a fortified position known as Shoddy Farm. It was reinforced 400 yards away from the ruins of an asylum. On the 16th of July there was an unsuccessful raid by the 12th Royal Irish Rifles. The 9th RAF was ordered to take the farm. On the 20th, there was a reconnaissance mission to ascertain the German defences. Then, on the 22nd at 1 a.m, artillery support set 765 rounds in 15 minutes in a fierce barrage. During this distraction, the raiding parties moved quickly over open ground towards enemy wire and successfully cut a gap for the platoon to get through, despite German machine gun fire. The Lewis guns were then set up to give the platoon cover. 3 raiding parties then made their way to the farm and cleared it with rifles and grenades, seizing 2 light machine guns in the process. Captain Murphy charged 1 machine gun post single-handed. The raid took less than an hour to achieve its aims, and the men quickly moved back across no man's land to their own trenches. During the raid, the Germans managed to release a signal flare, which brought a lot of enemy fire on the raiding party as they made their way back. Lewis guns would have moved forward as the men moved, aiming at the asylum, which had a garrison of from 70 to 100 men with 5 machine guns. This resulted in several casualties, with 2 officers and 4 men dead and 11 wounded. For his action that night with the Lewis gun, Sergeant John Adams received his 2nd military medal. Nearly 100 years later, as his grandsons stood in the same field, the landscape of war for John Adams became real, with the panoramic scene stretched before them.
Thursday, 4th July 1918, Field Postcard.
I am quite well and am going on well. Letter follows at first opportunity. I have received no letter from you lately.
Sunday, 7th July 1918, Field Postcard.
I am quite well and am going on well. I received your letter dated the 2nd of July 1918. Letter follows at first opportunity.
Sunday, 21st July 1918, Field Postcard.
I am quite well. I have received your letter. Letter follows at first opportunity. I have received no letter from you lately.
Thank you for listening to John Adams' Letters from the Front podcast. To find out more about John Adams and his family, visit www.johnadams.org.uk/letters. The history of the 9th Service Battalion, Royal Irish Fusiliers, during World War I is taken from Blacker's Boys. Visit them at www.9thirishfusiliers.co.uk with the number 9. Podcasts will be published 100 years after the letters were written, so will be published nearly every month. If you would like to contact us with comments or reactions, the email address is letters@johnadams.org.uk. This has been a Mark Mess production.